The wagon vanished over the rise like it had been swallowed by the sky. Emma stood in the snow so long her boots began to numb from the soles upward. The Kansas wind didn't blow like a breeze, it shoved, hard and impatient, snatching breath from her mouth and flinging it away in pale ribbons. The prairie was flat in every direction, except for one line of limestone bluffs that cut the horizon like broken teeth. It wasn't the kind of winter day that looked dramatic from far away. No swirling blizzard yet, no roaring whiteout. Just that quiet, punishing cold, the kind that doesn't announce itself, it simply takes. It took warmth first, then feeling, then time if you weren't careful. Beside her, Lily, only 7, all knees and elbows under a coat too thin for December, pressed into Emma's side and held on with both hands, as if letting go would make the world take her too. "Mom," Lily whispered, "where'd the wagon go?" Emma didn't answer right away because the truth felt too sharp to say out loud. An hour ago, the wagon was right there, canvas top patched with old flour sacks, wheels creaking, 2 horses pulling steady like they always did. Inside were their blankets, cooking pot, flour, beans, salt, spare boots, the rifle, the hatchet, the lantern, everything that turned traveling into living. And with the wagon had been him. Caleb Hart, Emma's husband on paper, Lily's father by blood, and the man who had just chosen the easiest way to erase his responsibilities: leave. Not in a rage, not with shouting, that would have been easier to understand. He'd done it quiet, like a man stepping away from a bad deal. Emma still heard his voice as clearly as she heard the wind. "I'm done," he'd said, tightening the reins. "I didn't ask for this life, and I didn't ask for either of you." As if a woman and child were a debt he'd grown tired of paying. Then he'd turned the wagon around while Emma was hanging their only extra blanket over a bush to shake out the dust. He'd waited until her back was turned, like a coward with good timing. By the time she spun around, the horses were already moving. She ran after him through snow that stole her legs. Lily chased too, crying, "Papa," until her voice cracked. Caleb never looked back. Now the prairie lay empty, and winter silence pressed in. Emma swallowed hard. The air tasted like iron. Her fingers were bare because she'd given Lily her mittens half an hour ago. "Lily," she said, forcing her mouth to work, "we can't stay here." Lily looked up, eyelashes clumped with snow. "Is he coming back?" Emma wanted to say yes, because mothers say yes when children are falling apart, but a lie wouldn't warm them, a lie wouldn't feed them. "No," she said, "not today, maybe not ever." Lily's face crumpled, but the wind stole most of her sob. She tried to be quiet, as if sound might make the prairie angrier. Emma knelt and pulled Lily close, their foreheads touching. "Listen to me," Emma said. "You and I are still here. That means we still have choices." Emma didn't say it because she felt brave. She said it because she couldn't afford not to. She said it like striking flint, hard, deliberate, trying to create a spark inside Lily that winter couldn't smother. Choices like what? Emma turned her head, scanning the land again. Snow, scrub grass, and those limestone bluffs far off. She remembered something she'd noticed yesterday before the world split in two. A dark break in the pale stone, not a crack, an opening, a cave. At the time, it had just been a strange shadow. Now it was the only shelter she could picture that didn't require a miracle. Emma stood, taking Lily's hand. "We walk." Lily's eyes widened. "Where?" "To the rocks," Emma said. "There's a cave in those bluffs. If I remember right, it's not far." Not far was a lie, but it was a lie shaped like hope. They started across the prairie, and the cold immediately reminded Emma how little they had. No food, no matches, no horses, no wagon, no spare coat, not even a scarf. Only the clothes on their backs, Lily's 2 small boots, and a thin blanket Emma had snatched from the bush before the wind could bury it. The snow came up to Lily's shins, and after 10 minutes her steps turned uneven. Emma lifted her onto her hip and carried her for a stretch, then put her down again when her own arms began to shake. The wind fought them the whole way, as if winter itself didn't like the idea of them surviving out of spite. By the time they reached the foot of the bluffs, the daylight had thinned into a pale gray, the kind that makes everything look farther away than it is. The limestone rose above them in rough layers, pocked with holes and dark seams. Emma found the opening. It wasn't large, maybe 6 feet tall at the mouth, wider than a doorway, but not much, a slash of darkness in a wall of bone-white rock. She stepped close, held her breath, and listened. No growl, no rustle, no fresh scent of animal. She grabbed a stone and tossed it inside. It clattered and rolled for a while, then stopped. Emma took Lily's hand again. Stay close. Inside, the air changed. It wasn't warm, but it wasn't cutting like the wind. The cave swallowed sound, made their breaths loud. The floor was dry in places and gritty with old leaves. A few scattered bones, rabbit or squirrel, bleached and harmless. No fresh tracks. Empty. Safe enough. Lily's voice came out tiny. "Is this our house now?" Emma stared into the chamber, the darkness stretching back like a tunnel into tomorrow. She thought of Caleb's wagon disappearing, of the way he'd spoken as if he was talking about weather. A hot anger rose in her chest, so sudden it almost warmed her. "If it has to be," Emma said, "then yes." That first night they curled together under the thin blanket near the cave wall, where the wind couldn't reach. Emma used her own body like a shield, pressing Lily to her chest, rubbing her arms and legs until feeling came back in patches. Lily eventually fell asleep, but Emma didn't. She listened to the wind scream outside and planned like her life depended on it, because it did. By morning, Emma's first thought was simple. Without fire, the cave was just a waiting room for death. But she had no flint, no matches, no steel. She did have rocks, dry wood near the bluff, and memory, thin and shaky, but there. When Emma was a girl, her father had once made fire using a bow and drill during a storm that soaked their tinder. She'd watched from the doorway, fascinated by the stubborn miracle of smoke turning to flame. It looked easy in his hands. Now, with Lily shivering behind her, it looked like the hardest thing in the world. Emma told Lily to gather dry grass and the thinnest twigs she could find, anything that would catch if a spark appeared. Lily obeyed with the serious focus of a child who understands the stakes without wanting to. Emma searched for the right wood, not too hard, not too soft. Cottonwood, willow, cedar, anything that could make a coal. She found a dead cottonwood branch sheltered under an overhang and dragged it inside. Using a sharp stone, she carved a shallow notch in a flat piece of wood and shaped a spindle. She tied a strip of cloth torn from the inside hem of her skirt into a rough bowstring. Her hands were already raw, and the cold made them clumsy. Still, she set the spindle into the notch and began, back and forth, back and forth. The bow squeaked, the spindle turned, dust collected. Nothing else happened. Minutes became hours. Her palms blistered, the blisters split, blood mixed with wood dust and made a dark paste. Lily sat nearby, hugging her knees, watching as if her belief could push the coal into existence. "Tell me a story," she said quietly. "What kind?" "About summer," she said, "a real summer." So Emma talked while she worked, about tall grass in June, about fireflies, about cornfields in the evening, about warm rain and porch steps and the smell of bread. Her voice stayed steady even when her hands didn't. Then, finally, a thin line of smoke curled up from the notch.
Emma froze, terrified that stopping would kill it. She worked faster, harder, jaw clenched, eyes wetting from smoke and exhaustion. A tiny coal formed, no bigger than a pea, glowing faint red like the last ember of a dying stove. Emma's whole body shook as she lifted it onto Lily's bundle of dry grass and bark. "Blow," Emma whispered. Lily blew gently, cheeks puffed, eyes wide. The coal brightened, the nest smoked, then flame. A little tongue of fire licked up, delicate and fierce. Emma fed it twigs like she was feeding a newborn. The flame grew, snapped, caught on thicker sticks. Within minutes, the cave held a small, crackling fire that pushed back the worst of the cold and painted the stone walls orange. Emma sat
back and cried, quietly, because she didn't want to frighten Lily. But Lily crawled into her lap anyway. "We did it," Lily whispered. Emma pressed her forehead to her daughter's hair. "We did." Now they had heat. Heat meant they could think. The next problem was the wind. The cave entrance faced the prairie, and every gust turned the mouth into a funnel. Emma gathered branches and leaned them into a rough frame across the opening, leaving space at the top for smoke. Lily helped by dragging smaller sticks, her boots leaving stubborn tracks in the snow. Emma stuffed grass, leaves, and pine needles into the gaps. She smeared damp mud where she could find it, then let the fire dry it into a crust. It wasn't pretty, but it cut the wind. But the first time a hard gust hit, the whole barrier trembled, and a chunk of dried mud cracked loose. Emma caught it before it fell into the fire. Her heart pounded, not from fear of smoke, but from the knowledge that one mistake could undo everything. So she improved it. She placed a thicker branch across the top like a brace. She packed the gaps tighter. She learned where wind found weak spots and sealed them like winter was an enemy trying to slip a knife through the cracks. Water came from melted snow, warmed on a flat stone near the fire. It tasted smoky, but it kept them alive. Food was the cruelest problem. Emma had eaten nothing since the day before. Lily's stomach growled so loudly in the cave that it sounded like another creature. Emma watched the snow outside like it held answers. Tracks told stories, if you learned how to read them. Rabbit prints, paired hops, a pattern like punctuation. Squirrel tracks, busy and scattered. Once, near a stand of scrub, she saw a deeper mark, coyote. And that night she saw something worse, the wide, clean stride of a cat. Not a house cat, something that moved like it owned the land. Emma went back into the cave and didn't let Lily outside alone after that. She needed traps, no wire, no rope, but she did have the stiff stays inside her corset, thin metal strips meant to shape a waist, never meant to catch dinner. Emma pried one free using a stone and bent it into a loop. She remembered her father's snares, how he set them in a rabbit run, how he hung them at the right height. The first snare caught nothing. The second snapped empty. The third held a tuft of fur and no rabbit. Emma stared at that fur for a long time, like it was mocking her. Then she reset the snare and tried again. On the fifth morning, she found it. A rabbit, caught clean. Lily's eyes went huge. "Mama?" Emma swallowed hard because the rabbit was alive and scared, and her mother heart hated what she had to do. But Lily needed to eat, and winter didn't forgive softness. Emma ended it quickly, whispering, "Thank you," like a prayer. She skinned it with a sharp stone, hands shaking. The work was messy, intimate, and nothing like cooking in a kitchen. When she finished, she had meat, bones, and a pelt. She cooked the meat over the fire on a flat rock, turning it slowly. The smell filled the cave, rich and sharp. Lily ate in careful bites, like she was afraid the food would disappear if she moved too fast. Emma ate too, but she gave Lily the best pieces. When Lily's color returned and her eyes stopped looking glassy, Emma felt something inside her loosen. They weren't safe, not yet, but they weren't dying today. Days turned into a rhythm. Morning, bank the fire, melt snow, check the snares. Midday, gather wood, rebuild whatever the wind had torn apart. Evening, cook, mend, plan. Emma used rabbit bones to make crude needles. She twisted sinew into thread. She stitched pelts together until they had something warmer than their thin blanket. She built a sleeping platform from branches so they weren't lying on the coldest part of the cave floor. Lily helped weave grass mats for insulation. They worked like a team, not because childhood should be like that, but because survival demanded it. Emma also made rules, quiet rules that kept them alive. Never go far without marking the way back. Never leave the fire unbanked. Never waste fat, bone, hide, or ash. And if Lily ever felt sleepy outside, she had to tell Emma immediately. Because in winter, sleep could be the gentlest way to die. One night, while Emma stitched by firelight, Lily asked softly, "Are we poor now?" Emma looked around. Stone walls, smoke-stained ceiling, a wind barrier made of branches, a bed of grass and fur, a small pile of dried meat, tools made from bones and rocks. Not much, but it was theirs. "We're not poor," Emma said. "We're building." Lily blinked. "Building what?" Emma tied off a knot in the sinew and held up the stitched pelt like a prize. "A life," she said. "A life that doesn't need someone like him." After the worst storms, when snow piled high enough to seal their entrance half shut, they stayed inside for a day or two at a time. Emma told stories. Lily invented new ones, animals with fancy names and dramatic adventures. Sometimes Lily would go quiet and stare into the fire. "I miss him," she admitted once, voice small. Emma pulled her close. She didn't correct Lily. A child's love doesn't obey logic. "I know," Emma said, "but missing him doesn't mean what he did was right. Will he ever feel bad?" Emma stared into the flames, thinking about Caleb's calm voice, the way he didn't look back. "I don't know," she said honestly, "but we're not going to wait for him to become a better man." Winter deepened. Emma dug a storage hollow in the coldest part of the cave and packed it with snow to keep meat from spoiling. She made a drying rack near the fire for strips of rabbit, letting smoke and heat preserve them. She learned which wood burned long and which burned hot. She learned that pine pitch could seal cracks in their barrier and waterproof the worst gaps. Lily became skilled at finding it, her small hands sticky and proud. They became quieter in the way people do when every sound costs energy. But they also became stronger. Then came the storm that tried to bury them. It started as a low moan far out across the prairie, like something huge waking up. The wind changed tone, deeper, angrier, and the snow went from gentle falling to sideways flying. Emma saw it coming when the smoke from their fire stopped rising clean. It pushed back into the cave, swirling, choking. "Inside," Emma said quickly. "Now." Lily didn't argue. She'd learned the sound of danger by then. Emma shoved more branches into the barrier, packed grass in gaps, then piled snow against the outside like a wall. Her fingers burned, not from warmth, but from cold biting down harder. Within minutes, the world outside disappeared. Just white, just roar. The cave shook slightly with each gust. The barrier groaned like a living thing. Lily sat with her blanket pulled to her chin, eyes wide. "Is it going to break?" she whispered. Emma didn't answer fast. She listened, head tilted, reading the wind like it was a language. Then she said, "Not if we keep it strong." All night, Emma stayed awake in shifts. When the barrier loosened, she pushed it back. When the smoke thickened, she opened a small gap near the top for air. She kept the fire low so the glow wouldn't pull attention. They ate 2 small strips of dried rabbit, just enough to stop Lily's shaking. Emma didn't tell Lily she was counting their remaining meat in her head, like a beads on a string. When morning came, it didn't look like morning. The entrance was half sealed with snow. Only a thin blade of daylight slipped through.
The cave felt smaller, like winter had tightened their fist around them. Emma dug them out slowly, careful not to collapse the barrier. When she finally pushed through, a wall of snow stood outside, smooth and high. They'd been almost buried alive. Emma looked at Lily and forced a calm voice. "We stay closer today." Lily nodded, swallowing. "Okay." 2 days after the storm, Lily started coughing. At first it was small, just a throat tickle. Emma told herself it was smoke or cold air. But that night, Lily's cheeks flushed hot, even as her hands stayed icy. She shivered under the blanket, teeth clicking. Emma felt Lily's forehead, and her stomach dropped. Fever. In a house, you'd brew tea, call a neighbor, fetch a doctor. In a cave, you did what you could. Emma boiled snow water until it steamed and kept it near Lily's hands. She rubbed Lily's arms and legs to keep blood moving. She forced small sips of warm water into Lily's mouth, even when Lily didn't want it. Lily's eyes looked glassy, unfocused. "Mom, are you going to—" "No," Emma said sharply, then softened. "No, you're staying with me." Emma remembered herbs from her childhood, how her mother had used pine needles for coughs and colds. Emma gathered a handful and steeped them in hot water. The tea tasted like the forest. Lily made a face, but drank. Emma didn't sleep that night. She sat with Lily's head in her lap and hummed songs she barely remembered, tunes her own mother had sung when thunder rolled and children were afraid. By morning, the fever eased just a little. Not gone,
but not climbing. Emma exhaled a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Lily blinked slowly. "You look like you fought a bear." Emma let out a small laugh, shaky. "Feels like it." Lily's lips twitched. "Did you win?" Emma brushed hair from Lily's face. "I'm still fighting." A week later, when Lily was stronger, Emma let her sit at the cave mouth in sunlight while Emma checked snares. The air was sharp but calm. A good day. Emma found 2 rabbits, small but enough. As she turned back, she noticed the birds had gone quiet. That silence was never accidental. Emma stopped walking. Ahead, near the brush, something moved low to the ground. Not a coyote. Too smooth, too patient. A big cat. It wasn't close enough to see clearly, but Emma knew that shape, the heavy shoulders, the slow, deliberate step. Her heart slammed. Emma backed up without running, clutching the rabbits like useless prizes. The cat paused, watched, then melted into the brush like smoke. Emma didn't breathe until she was back at the cave. She pulled Lily inside immediately. "What is it?" Lily asked, frightened. "Nothing," Emma lied at first, then shook her head. "No, not nothing. Something. But we're safe." That night, Emma moved the drying meat deeper inside. She scattered ashes near the entrance to hide scent. She kept the fire small. She taught Lily a new rule. "If you hear the birds go quiet, you come to me." Lily nodded hard. "I promise." In late February, after another calm stretch, Emma ventured farther than usual. She marked the path with small stacks of stones so she wouldn't lose her way if snow began to fall. Beyond a line of scrub, she found something that made her chest feel lighter. A creek. Frozen solid, yes, but the land dipped the right way. That meant water flowed here, and when spring came, it would run again. Emma chipped through the ice with a stone until she reached slow, dark water beneath. She filled the tin cup and brought it home like treasure. That night, Lily drank and said, "It tastes different." Emma nodded. "That's because it's real." The wind barrier had served them, but Emma wanted more. So she built a door. Not a fine one, not a carpenter's door, a survival door. She found a fallen log and split it into rough boards using stone and stubborn force. She tied the boards together with twisted sinew and strips of cloth. For hinges, she used flexible green branches and drilled holes with a sharp rock. It took 3 days. It made her hands ache,
But when she swung the door into place and felt it block the wind like a solid promise, she almost cried again. Lily touched it with both hands. "We have a real door." Emma swallowed. "Yes." Lily smiled, small and proud. "So we really live here." Emma looked around their cave. Fire, bed platform, drying rack, door. And for the first time she allowed herself to think it. This isn't just surviving anymore. Then, one afternoon in late February, something changed. Emma was checking snares when she saw tracks that didn't belong to animals. Boot prints. Human. She froze, heart pounding. Boot prints meant help or danger. She followed them carefully, keeping the bluff at her back, and spotted movement near a clump of cottonwoods. One man, alone, leading a mule with a bundled pack. A traveler, a trapper, or worse. Emma ducked behind a rock, watching. The man moved slow, as if tired or hungry. His coat was patched, his hat brim was bent. He didn't have the confident stride of someone hunting people. Emma made a choice. She stepped out where he could see her, but not close enough for him to grab. The man jolted, hand going to his belt, then stopping when he saw Emma's face. "Ma'am," he said carefully. "Didn't reckon I'd see anyone out here in this weather." Emma didn't lower her guard. "Neither did I." His eyes flicked towards the bluffs. "You livin' nearby?" Emma hesitated. Then Lily's face appeared at the cave entrance, curious and pale, and the man's expression shifted, surprise first, then something like understanding. He lowered his hands. "Name's Jonah Pike. I'm headed east towards the settlements. Lost my partner last month. Been running lines alone." Emma kept her voice steady. "I'm Emma. That's my daughter Lily." Jonah's gaze softened. "You two been survivin' out here?" Emma didn't answer the question directly. "What do you want?" Jonah's mouth twitched. "Food, if you've got it, which I doubt, but I've got a little dried corn and a tin cup. I can trade." Emma stared. Trade meant he had supplies. Supplies meant a chance to stop living one day at a time. "What do you want in trade?" Jonah nodded at the rabbit pelts hanging to dry near the entrance. "Fur. Warmth." Emma's fingers tightened around the stone in her hand. After a long moment she said, "Wait there." She went inside, whispered to Lily, and returned with 2 pelts, small but carefully stitched and clean. Jonah handed over a cloth bundle of dried corn and a small tin cup dented but usable. Then, after a pause, he also placed something else on the snow. A flint striker. Emma's breath caught. Jonah watched her face, then shrugged like it wasn't a miracle. "Figured you might need it more than me." Emma swallowed hard. "Why?" Jonah looked away towards the flat white prairie. "Because I've been left before too, and because you've got a child." He nodded once, respectfully. "Keep your distance from strangers. Not all men are worth trusting." Then he led his mule away, leaving boot prints behind him that the wind would erase by morning. Emma stood holding the flint striker like it was gold. When she returned to the cave, Lily whispered, "Are we saved now?" Emma crouched, hugging her daughter tight. "We're safer, and we're not alone in the world, even if it feels like it." March came like a rumor at first, longer light in the mornings, a softening in the air, a drip of melted snow that sounded like music in the cave. One morning Lily stood at the entrance and said, "Listen." Emma listened. Drip, drip, drip. Spring was knocking. With spring came decisions. They could try to reach a settlement, they could look for work, they could find a school for Lily, or they could stay long enough to gather strength before facing a world that had teeth of its own. Emma stepped outside, watched the sun strike the limestone until it glowed pale gold, and felt something she hadn't felt since Caleb left. Control. That night, Emma mixed charcoal with fat and scratched their mark on the stone wall near the back of the cave. Simple, not pretty, but real. Emma and Lily, Kansas Territory, winter 1882. We lived. Lily traced the letters with her fingertip, then looked up. "Do you think he'll ever find us?" Emma stared at the words until they blurred. "If he does, he won't find the same people he left behind." Lily leaned against her. "Good." Emma kissed the top of her daughter's head, listening to the softened wind outside. Winter had tried to erase them. Instead, they had built something stubborn and bright inside stone. A fire, a shelter, a home, and a promise that didn't depend on anyone coming to save them. If you enjoyed this historical frontier survival story, like, subscribe, and share. It truly helps the channel grow. And comment below. Could you survive one winter with only a cave, a fire, and your determination?